Hey everybody and welcome back to Mel's Board Game Room, and I am doing my top 9 games of the games that I've played in the month of April. So before I get into that, I just want to mention that I have a sponsor called Games and Couples, which is part of Oshrat Online Counseling, and they concentrate on couple counseling utilizing board game as a tool to put the Goffman principle into practice. So be sure to check them out. I'll have the link down below. So let's have a look at the games played in April. So here's the stats. I have played 49 times of 42 different games. So I thought that was pretty good. I did pretty good for the month of April. And then that is 4% of my own base collection that got played as well. So let's get started. In the number 9 position, I have Le Havre. And I've been wanting to play this one for a long time because I have played the Inland Port, which is a 2-player version of this one, and I really enjoyed that one, so I was super interested to see how this one compared. I bought it sometime this year, and then finally got it to the table. And let me tell you, first of all, they play very differently. They have 2 different feels, so worth owning both, in my opinion. The aspect that I thought was super cool in the 2-player version are completely different in this one. So playing the Inland Port does not prepare you for playing Le Havre. So here's a picture of what we play. So first of all, you have these tiles that have like the different actions that you can, and I think those tiles kind of indicate the resources that are going to be available. And you have like a play order, and the first player can go and select the action they want to do, and they'll kind of collect what's available in that location, and you kind of keep going. So depending on the number of player, how many times or how many actions you get to do, because those actions aren't going to change. So when you're the active player, the first player, you probably will get an advantage. Well, first you get to pick first, but then you might end up having more actions that you can do. So you're collecting all of these resources, and the resources are double-sided because you can kind of convert them down the road to the other, hide can become leather, for example, and so on. So there's different resources that you can collect, and you can collect the cows, and if you have enough cows at the end of the round, then they would breed. So same with grain, you would be able to plant more grain, so you would get more of that. So there's some resources that would kind of build itself up, so you consider that when you because you also have to feed, and you can get rid of your cows and get so much food out of them, or in the same with your grain, but then you may not have enough to replenish, so you want to kind of consider that. There's very thinky, and then you have the different properties or the different buildings that you can get and build, and when you acquire them, they'll be in front of you. Now you'll have them in front of you, they're going to be worth points possibly at the end of the game, but when you decide which action you want to do, where you want to send your worker to, you can also activate the buildings in front of other players, which is very much like the Inland Port in that term. And then while they're there, they're blocking it. So until they move that token to activate a different action, you can't use that building, whether it's in front of them or whether it's in front of you. And it was interesting because you're trying to get building that's going to be able to work with each other. It's like, okay, well, I have this one that requires for us to have these resources, but we don't have anything that creates the resources, so we want to make sure we build that building. Now, keep in mind, these buildings are supposed to be sorted by number. First time we played it, well, halfway through the game, it took us halfway through the game to realize we didn't sort them. So we were getting buildings that we couldn't utilize, or we couldn't get the resources to purchase or to build, and it was it was a little frustration. So whoops, now we know, so be aware of that. But it was very interesting, very thinky, kind of has an engine building feel to it, and then at the end you kind of convert everything to try to get the most points. I quite enjoyed it. I very much enjoyed the Inland Port. If I had to pick between the two, I think I would still pick the Inland Port. I think that one is still a little bit above, but I'm glad I own both, and I do appreciate both, and I'm hoping I get to play both again. So then, in number 8 position for the month of April is Holotype, Mesozoic North America. So this one was a Kickstarter that had been um, fulfilled a little while ago, and I purchased my copy at Pimento Way Games, which is a game store based out of Edmonton. Now they have online store as well. So, and last time I checked, they still had copies of this game because I was really impressed with this. This is such a great game, and it is unlike any other dinosaur game because this is dinosaur science. It's actual facts. Like it's not just cartoony. No, and you're raising dinosaurs, and everything is really far fetched. This is you're a paleontologist. That's your worker placement, and you have a field assistant that's going to help, and he can do some things, but not quite as good as the paleontologist. But then, if you've published enough research, you're going to attract a student that is studying to become a paleontologist, and they'll be able to do the bigger action like you. So this is a worker placement game. You're going to be sending your workers at different locations. You start with two, eventually you'll get a third one. And as I mentioned, it's all about dinosaurs, but you'll get cards that have like actual dinosaur facts, you know, and what era they were from, and some information on there. It was so interesting, and you're collecting fossils, and then you can trade those fossils to, you know, kind of do your research so that you can do a research on the different dinosaurs, and then you get those dinosaur cards that you build up. And you'll have different requirements, different goals that you're trying to do. And then you want to publish your research, and then to do that, you need to have acquired so many of these dinosaurs fossils, or kind of completed fossils, so that you can go and publish your research, and then you can put those tokens down to cover the different research that are available, and then that's going to uncover different things on your board as well. And then each like certain amount of rounds, you'll get special abilities that you can activate. The whole thing is so well made, well thought of. I really, really enjoyed this game. Plus, I played with my friends and their son, and this son is wanting to become a paleontologist. So that's his goal. That's what he's studying to do. So right away after this game, they bought their own copy. Um, it was so much fun. I really, really recommend this one. It was good. Now, in number 7 position is Scoville. So this is an older game. It's one that I've heard about lots, and it's one that intrigued me lots, but I just never had the chance to get it to the table. For one, it's very difficult to find. It's been out of print. They are doing a reprint, and I don't know if that's been released yet or if that's still coming. They are doing a reprint, and I don't know how much difference that reprint is going to have, but this version was really interesting. Because what's going to happen is you can collect certain, like there'll be kind of some, what are we planting here? Peppers, like hot peppers. There'll be different hot peppers that you can get, and you'll be planting them. And then as you plant the peppers side by side, you can then kind of they'll activate and generate a new pepper. And depending, like you have a whole grid that shows, you know, if this pepper and this pepper comes together, and then they're going to make this kind of pepper. And then this one and this one. So you're putting these peppers in the garden, and you're trying to generate, kind of combine them to create the peppers that you want. And then you can use those peppers to kind of purchase different things, or purchase kind of like end of game scores and different things like that. And then you also have like different goals. So the first one to plant so many peppers takes that goal. First one to get that particular goal would score more points for it than others. It was really neat and very interesting, and the fact that you have all those little pepper shaped components just make that whole game even better. And it was kind of thinking of where you're going to place things, and then you have to move your gardener around as well. So it's like, oh great, I want to be able to plant that, and I could if I'm next to this one, because you want to have your gardener between the peppers to be able to generate it, but it's all the way on the other end, and I can't move that far in one round. Like, you know, there's different things like that to consider. So neat. Quite enjoyed that one. We ended up pulling the iron clays for scorekeeping or money keeping or whatever they were for. But it was a lot of fun. I highly recommend. So if you come across this copy or this game, I would say get it because it is difficult to get now. But if you see the new Scoville, that that's a great game. So keep an eye out for that as well. And then in number 6 position for the games played in April is Babylonia. I like Reiner Knizia game. I am enjoying this game quite a bit as well. So what's really neat about it, like the components are all these big wooden discs with like these symbols, and to look at them, I'm like, I have no idea what's going on here. But it looks interesting, and this is very much an area control. So you have the map that goes out, and you have some of the tiles that goes out that'll have like different symbols, and those are like the cities. And then you have those wooden temples that go down. Those are the temples, and each one is gonna score you in a different way. So every time you place a token next to a temple, you will score the amount of point of every temple you have a token next to. So ideally, you want to try to get a token next to every temple that you can, so that I'll play another one here. Oh, I'm touching 3 temples. I score 3 points. So and before it clutters up, right? So you got to keep that in mind. Then with the cities that have the icon on the tile, with those ones is when that city gets completely surrounded, every cluster of tiles that is touching one side of it will get to score every symbol that matches the city that is in your cluster. So the tile that matches doesn't necessarily have to touch that city itself, but that symbol needs to be in your cluster. So you're trying to create this as ideally a big cluster so that all of them can connect together. Now there's some water location, and those locations aren't going to have a symbol attached to it, but you can put a face down farmer on top of it to kind of grow your cluster and then start connecting to other tiles on the other side of the map, because there'll be like a river that runs through. It was thinky. It was really neat. And then every time a city kind of collects, you will score your symbols, and then you score your city tiles that are in front of you. So you're trying to accumulate more city tiles as well. This one was super cool. I really enjoyed it. I did a big mistake when I played because I started on the edge of the map, and my friend started in the middle of the map. Well, it's easier to touch everything when you've got your cluster right in the middle of the map, and I didn't block them soon enough. So that was interesting. Definitely learned a lot in that first game, and I am looking forward to playing it again. That was Babylonia, number 6. So in number 5 position, we have Art Society. I'd seen this one. I had known nothing about it. It looked interesting. It kind of reminds me a little bit like a more advanced, what's the word, patchwork. Because you have these different tiles that you're going to be bidding on. And these tiles are different art that's going to go on your wall. And you're trying to fill your wall with artwork. But you don't want to have the same type of art touching another same type of art, but you do want to have the frames matching. Like there's different things like that to consider. And then of course you got to have the orientation the right way. So if artwork is very tall, you got to put it on its tall side, but then that means it has to fit in there somewhere. So you're trying to bid to get the proper art that's going to fit in what you're trying to fill. And then every once in a while you can also get little filler tokens that you can kind of put to squeeze into the little holes that you're generating. And then depending on what's touching what, you'll be able to score for that. And the bidding was really interesting because every player got these big kind of bidding like you got the billing pallets you would put up at a if you were at an auction. Well, you have one of those, and you have like a bunch of them from like 1 to, I can't remember verse 14, but 1 to a certain number. And then on your turn, you're gonna place your bid, and then everybody reveals it. And then in turn order, whoever wins the bid is gonna go and pick first, and then so on until the lower bid. But now, if you bid high, so you get first pick, that means that high token is gone. You have less tokens to bid in, and you've used one of the high ones, so there's that to consider as well. It was a really neat kind of tile laying bidding game. I quite enjoyed that one. That was Art Society. Then in my number 4 position for the month of April, I have Sanssouci. This is an older game, and we played it when I was visiting at Pimetaway. They had been sent a demo copy that they could have in their game library to play there. So he ended up showing it to us, and this game was very interesting. So you have these cards, and you're going to select the card you want to play, and those cards are going to have a different color, and that's the builder you can go and grab a tile from, and you're going to have a tile attached to those colors. And it's like, okay, well, I'm going to grab from blue, and I'm grabbing this one, and then you're going to look down the blue row if you're grabbing from blue, and the column, and it's like, okay, well, I'm building a fountain on the blue row, so it goes here. And ideally what you're trying to do is from top to bottom, you're trying to create so that you have these elements in your garden so that the people visiting can kind of move further down. Now, they can go across the other elements and come back, but you have one maple for each element, and they have to end their turn on it. So that means if you had like a gap, they could go from like looking at the fountain over to the bush, down the bush, and then back at the fountain and end their turn there. And then you're going to score where they've moved to each round. So, but you get to score the location. So, like the top one is worth 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, 4 points, 5 points, and so on. So it makes sense to move them slowly, one at a time, if you can, because then you're going to score both 4, then you're going to score 5, and then we're going to score 6 instead of jumping all the way down to 6 and only scoring 6 one time. But when the end of the game comes, that's it. Like, so you want to also not dilly-dally too much so that you didn't get to move forward as much as you were hoping for. And is also the matter of getting the tile to kind of complete the road that you want. The whole thing was so interesting. I really, really enjoyed it. It was a very different type of concept of game that I hadn't come across. And it's like a tiling puzzle game that was super fun. I highly recommend if you come across this one to try it, and that was Sanssouci. Then in number 3rd position, I have Mexica. And this is the yellow version, so the Super Meeple version. I've played this one a few times, and it is so good. First of all, component. This has nice, big, chunky bits. And you have these different temples, South American temples that are 4 high, 3 high, 2 high, 1 high, and they have dots on the top to show how much value there is. And you start with this big map, and you're trying to divide this into different areas by placing water, and you're building canals to break up the areas into different provinces, I think it was called. And then once you have them in a province, you can you have these tiles that be like, okay, well, this one wants to have 5 squares in order to build this province, and it's going to give you this many points. So if you're able to cut this out in the map and you kind of declare that this province has been created, you move this over, nobody can break it up anymore, and now this province has been created, and you get to score points for creating the province. But then at the end of each round, you also, well, not round, but there's like different scoring segment where you're going to get to score. You score if you have majority in that particular province. So depending on, if you put a temple that has the 3 dots, that's going to have a control of 3. And whoever has the most control gets to score more, and then second position will get to score a little bit less. And you have your, I forget what he's called, but you have your little guy that you're going to move around, because he's got to be in the province in order to be able to claim it, to kind of turn it into a province. But he doesn't have to be there for you to kind of build certain things, because he doesn't, that's the workers that'll be doing that. He's too busy doing other stuff. And then you can build little bridges to be able to cross the canals, and then you can kind of build canals to build these provinces, but you can also build canals to mess up with the other player. And this one was so neat. And one thing I found was interesting with this one as well is if you're playing 2 players, you just randomly put a third player out so that they already have some buildings that kind of clutters up the board a little bit, and you play like around them, but when you go to count area control, they count as well even though they're not going to collect. So it worked really well for going down to a two player in an area control game. And then 3 and 4 players, yeah, but the components are so nice. I really enjoyed this one. Then, in my number 2 position for the month of April, we have El Grande. So, my friend bought El Grande. They just kind of recently republished this one because this is an older one, 1995. That's like really old. But they recently kind of republished it, and he bought it. And then one of the horse meeple of the red color was missing, so he contacted the company to get a replacement part. And they said, well, we don't do replacement parts, so we'll just send you a replacement game, which was amazing. And then he ended up selling the missing part one to me after he 3D printed a replacement bit. So you can't even tell when you're playing a game that anything was missing. But this is another area control. My God, I think I like area control games. I kept thinking I didn't, but honestly, I do. So with this one is another bidding one as well. So you have cards that's gonna have a digit from 1 to 14. We'll say I can't remember what the numbers are. And then you're going to put the card down to bid. And what the card is going to do is going to have the number. It also shows how many meeples you get to bring from the reserve into your available meeples. And then, so the lower the number, the more meeples you'll be able to come out, but you're going to be at the end of the line picking the action you want to do. But the higher the number, the less meeple you bring out, but then the more, you get to pick the action you want to do first. And then a card is kind of revealed for each different action that is available. And then you could be like, okay, well, I'm going to do this action, which allows me to put 4 meeples onto the board and something else possibly. And then, but when you place your meeples, you have to go on a province that is next to where the king is location. When the king is in one of the province, nobody can place a meeple there or remove a meeple from there. It kind of locks that area. They're busy kind of entertaining the king. Some of the action will allow you to move the king. So either you can move the king, then you can put your meeples where the new location is, or you could put your meeple first, then move the king. And sometimes you'll put like a meeple and strategically move the king where you are, because you have majority now, and having the king there, nobody else can go there, and you kind of secure that. But what's really interesting is you'll play 3 rounds. You'll do like 3 rounds of action, and then you score each province. Then you're going to do 3 rounds of action and score each province, and so on. And one other thing you're going to score is whoever has the majority in this tower. And you're going to count all the meeples, because you can put in on the map, or you can always put in the tower. That's an option. Then you would score who has the most on the tower. Who has the most gets 5 points. But you also get to pick, where those meeples are going to go on the map. And I think the king rule still applies, so you have to consider that as well. But and then you're like, oh great, I have the majority here, this is going to be great, I'm going to score 6 points, but then they're adding 5 meeples after the tower scores, because the tower always scores first. Then you score the different areas. So it was so neat. It was very interesting, like the decisions that you're doing with like what you're gonna bid, then which action you're gonna activate, and then where you're gonna put your meeples. And I really enjoyed this one. So that was my number 2, El Grande. Then in number 1 position for 2 months in a row, I have Dune Imperium Uprising, because I now got my own copy. I ended up getting the retail copy, so instead of the miniatures, it's all wooden components. And I personally kind of like it better. If I went out of my way to paint all the meeples, maybe I would like that better, but I know myself, I'm not going to do that. So the wooden copies, the wooden meeple and the wooden bits just really appealed to me, and I thought it looked better on the board. So I've played this with my spouse. So me and Lee managed to play this one. And we just recently just went and saw the Dune 2 movie, like the second portion of Dune. And Lee is reading the books right now as well. So this is a series that we're interested in. And it was neat. So it's area control. You'll be playing your players on the board to kind of activate different locations based on the card that you have. So you need to have the proper card in order to go and activate that location. So you want to keep that in mind as well. And you'll be acquiring new cards, so it's deck building. But then the cards that's in your hand that you don't get to use for placing your meeples, those will become cards that can get added to your battle if you're battling uh, in the center. And what's kind of neat with the battle thing here is there's a prize for first player, there's a prize for second place, third place, and so on. So it's you don't lose a lot by not winning a battle. So it's not like it's you're being crushed. You get another portion of the reward that's available. And sometimes maybe that's better. Like I've seen where like the second place actually had a better reward than first place, so you want to consider that. And eventually, as you build up and you kind of develop, because you're building on tracks as well, kind of creating your influence with the other houses or whatever it's called in this series. But like as you kind of grow and develop that, you'll be able to kind of get your hook, and then once you have your hook, you can also hook onto the Dune sandworms so that they can help and participate in your battle, and they will double your reward if you have a sand dune worm in the battle. But sometimes you'll have cards like different because you have like a card that shows the different battles you're going to be going through, and some is like, oh, no worms allowed in this one, so it's kind of like, oh, okay, so you can't multiply that one. But it is really neat, and this is a game where the first player that reaches 10 points ends the game, so it gets to be tight because it's not like you're going to score tons and tons of points, but you got a lot of significant decisions to make, and you have the spices and the water for resources to get different things or be able to purchase different things. I really, really like this one. First time I played was like so, it felt so epic. It was unreal. We ended up like tying for the win, and he ended up winning with the tiebreaker of having one spice more than I did. And I was like all the way at the back, and I just kind of caught right up, and like it was just such a neat, satisfying game. I'm really enjoying this one, and I'm so glad I have my own copy now. So that was it for the 9 games that I've made my top 9 for the month of April, and here's a recap of them all here. I used Pub Meeple for kind of sorting them all. But yeah, be sure to follow us on Facebook. My Facebook page is Mel's Board Game Room. I'm also on Instagram as Mel's_boardgame_room. I have my podcast that I do with my friend Carla called The Board Game Specialist, so be sure to give that a listen. And my YouTube channel, Mel's Board Game Room. So thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. Bye.